Think about it. For 30 years, one single name has just dominated the racing genre. Lap after lap, blue shell after blue shell. Today, we're firing up the engine to figure out the real secret behind Mario Kart's unbelievable 3-decade run at the very front of the pack.
And here's the wild part. Now, I know you've all seen this. It's how the game reaches way beyond the usual gaming crowd. It's one of those super rare games that's, as our source material perfectly puts it, beloved by both gamers and non-gamers alike. It's the ultimate party starter, right? A true cultural icon that gets everyone on the couch.
Okay, so let's get right into it. How? I mean, really, how do they pull it off? In an industry where a hit series can be forgotten in a couple of years, how has this one not only stuck around, but stayed at the very top for over 30 years? That's the big question we're tackling.
Well, the answer, and you're going to love this, it all starts with the technical problem. The story of Mario Kart isn't some grand plan that was perfectly executed. Nope, it's an accidental masterpiece, something amazing that was born because the hardware just wasn't good enough. So let's rewind the clock to the early 90s. Nintendo had just blown everyone away with F-Zero on the Super Nintendo. It was insanely fast, it looked futuristic, and it used this amazing graphics trick called Mode 7 that made it feel kind of 3D. The development team's first goal was pretty simple. Just make a 2-player version of that. But there was a huge problem. The Super Nintendo's hardware, it just couldn't handle the crazy speeds of F-Zero when you split the screen for 2 people. It just wasn't powerful enough. So the team had to make a massive change in direction. The dream of a fast multiplayer F-Zero was off the table. Instead, they came up with something completely new. A game with slower karts, a huge focus on multiplayer, and just pure chaotic fun.
And this is where that happy accident really happened. See, because the karts were slower, they needed something else to make the races exciting. And that something else became the single most important part of the series, the item system. Things like red shells and lightning bolts became the great equalizer. It was this layer of chaos that meant even if you were terrible and in last place, you always had a shot at stealing first.
This timeline just lays it all out perfectly. You've got 1990, F-Zero shows what's technically possible. A year later, they start working on what they think is going to be its sequel. But by 1992, when Super Mario Kart actually launches, it's a totally different beast, a brand new kind of racing game built entirely around that chaotic items system.
All right, so the foundation is set. The core idea is there. So what happens next? Let's look at how the series made that huge jump from flat 2D-ish tracks to real full-blown 3D worlds with every new console.
So the first big leap came with the Nintendo 64. And to make it happen, Nintendo had to make a massive sacrifice. The first and only time they've done this. They cut the frame rate in half, from a super smooth 60 frames per second all the way down to 30. But there was a very, very good reason for it. It was the only way they could render tracks in full 3D, with actual hills and drops and bridges that were just impossible before.
And from that point on, every new game added another critical piece to the puzzle. The N64 made it the 4-player party game. The DS, that took the whole thing global with online racing for the first time. Over the years, things like drifting got way more complex, with multi-stage boosts for pros to master. And then, Mario Kart 7 completely changed the game again by adding gliders and underwater sections, introducing a whole new vertical level to the racing. In this chart just perfectly shows you how the pure, wonderful madness has just scaled up and up. We started with those classic 4-player showdowns on the N64, then jumped to a much more crowded 12 racers on the Wii. And now, there's talk about future games having a massive 24-player race. Can you even imagine the chaos?
So this brings us to right now, and the series is at this really fascinating fork in the road. On one side, you have the absolute perfection of the old formula, and on the other, you have its most ambitious and maybe even controversial reinvention yet.
So, on the one hand, you've got Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. A lot of people see this as the absolute pinnacle. It's the perfected version of that classic racing we all know and love, and it's praised for being incredibly polished, with a mind-boggling 96 tracks. But what about the other path? Well, that's where things get really interesting. You can imagine a future game, a conceptual Mario Kart world that makes a radical change. It ditches the race circuits completely for a giant, seamless open world where everything is connected with no loading screens.
This table really breaks down that debate perfectly. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is all about perfected tradition. A Mario Kart world would be about ambitious, risky change. One is seen as the peak of the series, while the other would be this bold, maybe even flawed, leap into something brand new. And the debate over an open-world game really comes down to this. How do you use all that space? In a Mario Kart world, the classic Grand Prix could get criticized if it just connects tracks with boring straight highways. But a brand new mode, like a knockout tour, a giant elimination race across the whole map, that could be an absolutely brilliant way to use that open-world design.
So after all that history, all the evolutions and potential new directions, let's circle back to our original question. What is the secret sauce here? After 30 years, why is Mario Kart still lapping the competition?
It really all boils down to these three pillars. First, it's so simple to play. Literally anyone can pick up a controller and have a blast. But second, it's incredibly deep to master. The best players are perfecting racing lines, using multi-stage boosts, and thinking about item strategy. And finally, you have the chaos factor. That item system that means a race is never, ever over until you cross that finish line.
At the end of the day, it's not any one thing. Mario Kart's magic is this perfectly tuned, delicate balance between pure skill and dumb luck, between precise driving and total, unadulterated chaos. That's what's kept it in first place for all these years.
And that leads us to the future. As the series starts thinking about new ideas like an open world, it leaves all of us with one last, really big question.
Is taking this bold, new, open road the only way forward for a series that has already perfected and absolutely mastered the racetrack? That's a question that fans, and definitely Nintendo, will be racing to answer for a long time.